A few days ago, I got a YouTube comment asking me, hands or hips, and that made me wonder, is it possible to beat Skyrim's main quest with only thrusting? First, what counts as thrusting? Well, for this challenge, I will count anything the Dragonborn can do with his physical body. This includes shoving my fists up enemies and using my throat goat shouts. But weapons are sadly not allowed, and in the spirit of this challenge, I am not able to pull out of enemy encounters. I will also be allowing a single companion to travel with me to keep me sane. But before we get started, why don't you like and subscribe? It's free, and you can say you witnessed the great thrusting of 2025. Upon starting the game, we are thrusted into Skyrim on the prison transport wagon and into the character creator, where I become the first person in history to ever consider picking Orc, before realising they are just far too ugly, and I proceed to change my mind where I pick a Khajiit for that extra fisting power, and to experience immersive Skyrim racism. Our Khajiit was not only a punk, but in the lands of Hammerfell, he was also known as the Thrustborn, a man born to thrust, and legends say his thrusts were powerful enough to revive a dragon. But that was all meant to be just superstition, until Alduin the Ball Eater showed up. The tutorial continues as usual, with us running away like a little bitch and making it to the escape, where we follow this Nord in hopes that we won't be hate crimed by a Stormcloak. In this dungeon, we are finally unbound and the Thrustborn can be let loose upon Skyrim. But first, the Imperial who was going to chop off both of our heads was finally here, so we scheduled in our first thrusting of the season. Sorry to say, our thrusts were just too powerful for the captain, and on their way out, they gave us the heavy armour set, which is perfect for the Thrustborn, since the heavy armour perk called the Thrusts of Steel is one of our only means of increasing our damage output. With our new armour equipped, we ran through the dungeon, thrusted our shaft into guards, spiders, and a brown bear before escaping into the land the Thrustborn has been seeking for years, Rim. And on our way down to Riverwood, we encounter our first issue with this challenge. I have accumulated a total of 0 experience using my thrusting power. This means we will be unable to keep up with the deadliness of Skyrim, but the Thrustborn doesn't cower in fear. Bigger health bars just means a longer thrusting session. We then enter Riverwood, where we encounter a man called Seven. Seven tells me that his long-time political rival, Six, likes the same woman that he does, and he wants to sabotage their relationship. But I'm not one to interfere in competition, so I rat them both out to the lady for being raving misogynists, before heading into the tavern where I encounter somebody who I decided would be travelling with us for the whole journey. Their name was Kevin, and they would spout the most heinous bullshit, so I figured they would be perfect for the Whoie channel. So with our new companion in tow, we head to the city of Whiterun, where we have to inform the Jarl that the dragons are coming all over the land. Unfortunately, on the way there we were insulted by some randos who clearly want to taste the Thrustborn's thrust, but sadly that will have to wait. After threatening our way into Whiterun, we encounter yet another misogynist stalker, so we go batter the fucker with our giant meat hooks before going to the Jarl and telling him about the dragons. The Jarl then presents us with 2 options. Thrust him until he is sore, or go get the Dragonstone from Bleak Falls Barrow. Since the Thrustborn is already sore, he chose the latter and we head straight to Bleak Falls Barrow, where I got my very first level of this challenge. As we ran through the dungeon, we thrust our pelvis into a giant spider and a man called Arvel the Swift, and I've got to say, Arvel lived up to his name since he only lasted for a couple of thrusts. Continuing onwards, we slap some Draugr with our giant meaty body parts and pick up the stone at the end of the dungeon, where I remember that I am in fact still level 1, and just to add insult to injury, my companion kept calling me a directionally challenged motherfucker since I can only thrust forward.
Ah yes, meet the directionally challenged motherfucker, the Nerevarine.
We finally deliver the Dragonstone to the man of all time, and are then informed that there is a dragon attack nearby. We can finally prove the legend's true, that the Thrustborn can not only thrust a dragon to life, but he can also thrust it to death. So we immediately head to the dragon, where we got burned alive, and our companion gave us 5 big booms in the Big 25.
5 booms for this dead bitch. Boom, 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 boom.
Thanks to my piss poor stats, I died countless times until I just stood back and let everyone else do most of the work before repeatedly thrusting every dragon hole he had. With the dragon well and truly thrusted, we finally leveled up for one of the only times in this entire challenge. We had a vital decision to make here, so we decided to give the Thrustborn some more health, as he would need all the health in the world to keep himself from finishing. With the dragon defeated, the Thrustborn consumes its soul, and it turns out the Thrustborn isn't only exceptionally gifted at thrusting, but he's also exceptionally gifted at using his lungs and throat. With our new powers discovered, we go back into Whiterun where we are given a little side task to help find a Redguard woman. Naturally, I accepted in hopes that it would give us a little bit more experience. Spoilers, it didn't, but we found the Redguard woman in a nearby pub who tells us to go slaughter the people after her, and slaughter I did. Their jaws met my meaty fists and their hips met the Thrustborn's hands. With the bad people dead, we received yet another quest, but this time it was from our companion. We had to collect certain body parts from a giant, a frost troll, and a horse, in order to make them a potion which will show them all the hot singles in the area. But first, we join up with the companions so I can get some levels in heavy armour and increase my thrusts of steel skill. With this new power, we are ready to go meet the Greybeards in High Gothgar, so we Skyrim our way up the mountain, and they teach the Thrustborn how to use the deepest depths of his lungs and shout at dragons. And honestly, this part of the game makes me go, honk shmee. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all the training out the way at once, and the Greybeards wanted us to go grab their horn and move it up and down from a cave. So we head straight to said cave on our stolen horse and make it to the end where we are sent on one of the worst detours in all of gaming. The Greybeards' long hard horn was stolen by Delphine, so we instantly go back to Riverwood to get this chain of quests over and done with. On the way, we also collected all the essential items needed for our companion's potion, and it turns out when they drink it, they become the hot single in the area. Our companion was now able to drink the gender fluid, which is in fact badass representation. With our companion's request out the way, we can finally return to Long Hardwood to get the horn and return it to the Greybeards. Then we proceed to Lydia, our companion, off the side of the mountain. Sadly, the main quest then takes us back to Delphine, who wants the Thrustborn to prove he can 360 no-thrust a dragon and show his throat-goating ability. When meeting Delphine, we also run into Alduin, who uses his friend's reboot card to revive him. But this dragon could not compare to the Thrustborn's thrusting power, so obviously he went down, meaning Delphine now fully trusts the Thrustborn and tells us she's one of the Blades, one of the last bodyguards to the Septum lineage, because that went so well last time. As bad as a bodyguard Delphine probably is, we still had to help her by infiltrating the Thalmor embassy for some reason. So we put our heavy armour in the embassy and sneak in wearing absolutely nothing but our birthday suit. At the embassy, we meet a guy called Australia who provides us with our equipment from the room in the back. Seeing that this was a stealth mission, the Thrustborn made the executive decision to start poking it in everyone's ears, and by it, I mean his big meaty hooks. This turned this party into the type of party that I'm afraid I can't mention on YouTube. The only hint I can give you is Epstein and a certain president was here. Towards the end of this quest, the Thalmor said from inside the walls they have my friend Australia, but it seems the Thrustborn didn't give a single shit and Australia was struck down where he stood. So we ran off back to Riverwood to talk to Delphine once more for yet another honk me quest that doesn't require much thrusting. Apparently, the Thalmor are looking for a man named Esbern who has been hiding out down in the sewers near Riften, but in order to know exactly where, the Thrustborn had to thrust himself into a life of crime, stealing things in return for information. The information we were given tells us exactly where the old man is hiding and that the Thrustborn is in fact maidenless. Feeling utter sadness at the fact that he is maidenless, the Thrustborn ventures into the sewers and encounters Ian the Fist, who has some armour that increases fisting damage by 10 whole points. Naturally, we choke that fucker out and take that shit for the Thrustborn before finding Esbern, who is hiding away in the sewers like a little rodent. Luckily, Esbern knows ball about Alduin the Bull Eater, so we take him with us out of the Ratway, body thrusting all who stand in our way. We also make a quick detour to Whiterun where we test out our enchanting skills and put the fisting power onto a ring. But since I only had a wolf trapped inside of a soul gem at the time, I managed to increase my thrusting strength by a whole 1 point. After receiving the greatest buff known to man from God Todd himself, we return Esbern to Riverwood where he talks with Delphine and I go honk Next thing we know, we're travelling to Alduin's ball lair, where the Thrustspawn had to actually think for once. I fucking hate these Nordic ass puzzles, so I got my alter ego Fred to take over this part of the gameplay, and when I woke up, we seemed to have thrusted our way to the end of the dungeon, where it turns out even the Thrustspawn was sick of hearing Esbern and Delphine's yapping, so he attempted death. Unfortunately, it didn't work, and we had to wait for the yapping to finish. But instead of just sitting there waiting for the yapping to finish, the Thrustspawn decided to go rub one out and head to the Greybeards once more, where we were informed we had to learn another new shout from the dragon, voiced by Mario himself. When we visit him, he leans in to give the Thrustspawn a smoochy smooch and tells us to go to the northern lands of Skyrim, also known as Huddersfield, to find the Elder Who Scrolls. Upon doing what he says, we searched for an Elder Who Scrolls for about an hour, and we are then told the scroll is in a place called Blackreach. Since our Thrustspawn keeps refusing XP knowing he doesn't need it, he kept paying the price in Blackreach, dying many times, but somehow he still managed to thrust the Dwarven Centurion into oblivion. But the Centurion didn't go down easy. He is what some gamers call a switch, and he absolutely dominated the Thrustspawn for a time, but somehow we still came out on top with the power of our big meaty body parts. Venturing further into the cave, we encountered these two wankers bickering, and I knew I could get a nice new set of shiny armour. So we absolutely thrusted them, and we were bestowed with a new, better set of heavy armour with better protection. Because as we all know, when you thrust as much as the Thrustspawn, protection is vital. A little bit more running and thrusting later, we made it to the Elder Scrolls location, where we just kept hitting buttons until the Elder gave us their scroll out of pure pity and thirst. With the Elder's scroll finally acquired, the Thrustspawn heads to Mario once again and reads the thing, travelling through space and time, seeing things such as the PewDiePie bridge incident and time-travelling aliens who brings a dragon to its knees with all of their throat noises. The sound of the Glock tour causes good old Al to show up, and it was time for a showdown with the Thrustspawn. Their battle was legendary. The earth itself shuddered and trembled all around them, exchanging blow after blow, but in the end, the might of the Thrustspawn proved too much, and he thrusted into Alduin's mouth until he ran off like a little bitch. The Thrustspawn couldn't just let him go, not when he was so very close to victory, so he takes the next reasonable step and decides to trap a whole ass dragon in Whiterun. But unfortunately, in order to get the Jarl to agree, we had to conduct a Microsoft Teams meeting about a truce in Skyrim. This whole sequence was one of the most boring things I think I've ever had to sit through in Skyrim. Usually I just persuade the Jarl to leave it, but since I didn't have any points in speech, we just had to sit there, unable to thrust anything. I would have fully lost my shit in here if it wasn't for our good old companion Kevin giving us nuggets of wisdom throughout the whole assembly.
For even one more
Nerevar, I have to tell you something. I'm pregnant.
But after wasting my time, the game finally decided we were allowed to trap the dragon. Back at Dragon's Reach, we cool the dragon down, thrust it a few times, and trap the thing. But I swear, the way that wood hit the dragon, he should have just lost his head. For putting the dragon in such a humiliating position, the dragon tells us where Alduin fled to, and that we can actually ride him to his location. So we hopped on the back of the mythical beast, also known as your touchy Uncle Toby, and head to good old Al's hiding spot. We then sprint through this area at high speeds, avoiding all the puzzles and fighting every enemy along the way before jumping into the butthole of reality, taking us to Sovngarde. During the Thrustspawn's entry to Sovngarde, he realises that this is everything he's ever wanted, including big beefy men on a dragon bone bridge, who we of course thrust to prove our worthiness before heading into the Hall of Heroes, where we are met with 3 pro gamers who say they're going to help us send Big Al back to Toy Story 2. So we go outside and we do what we do in Britain, shout at the bad weather until it goes away before encountering Big Al, who turns out is actually the reanimated corpse of Margaret Thatcher. This lit something inside Thrustspawn. He was angry. The grave of Thatcher was his and many others' favourite gender-neutral toilet, so he put it on himself to thrust the Milk Snatcher back to oblivion with the power of friendship and Viagra. After a long, hard-fought fight, Mrs. Thatcher was sent back into the plains of oblivion, with us finally finishing Skyrim at level 6 using only our bodily thrusts to deal damage. But this wasn't over for the Thrustspawn. His adventures were just beginning. Although for now, he did decide to stay in Sovngarde a little bit longer longer because he heard something in the distance. He heard the screams of Faerun and saw a vision of a mad dictator hell-bent on ruling the land, and that tyrant's name was Donald.